Now, our next witness is happy to be called Gary, I understand. Gary, would you come forward, please? Now, Mary, would you ask Gary to take the oath?
Please state your full name.
Gary Allen Bennett.
Take the book in your raised hand and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear on Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Gary, you have severe haemophilia A,
Yes.
and your younger brother Tony also had severe haemophilia A.
Yes, he did.
In terms of your schooling, you went off to boarding school at age 5.
I did.
A different school to Treloar's. It
Yes.
wasn't a very happy
No,
experience.
it wasn't. No.
And so you returned home at 9.
Yes.
And then you went to some other local schools,
Yes.
which were also not particularly
Brilliant.
successful.
No.
It was then decided that you'd go to Treloar's. Can you tell us how that came about?
I actually had a place in Treloar's, I think in 79, and for whatever reason, I lost my slot. And I went to a local disabled school that took me in for a year. And when I eventually went up to Treloar's, I already met other people with disabilities. And it was, I'll be honest, it was quite amazing. And the only difference was there was 80 of us, 89 haemophiliacs there. And I met a lot of different people and a lot of friends and a lot of haemophiliacs.
You went up together with Tony, who was in the year behind you.
Yes, I was first, yeah.
And you've said that going to Treloar's opened your eyes even more to disability.
Yes, it did.
What else can you tell us about being a pupil at Treloar's?
Oh, God. Because of my younger years, the actual Treloar's school with sick bay in the treatment room was a godsend for all of us at the time, because yes, we all missed school. I missed loads of school. My younger years, I missed loads. So to walk in there with my parents, this is sick bay, this is where the boys will come and hopefully get onto Factor and everything will be good and go back to class, or if need be, stay in sick bay, and prep and homework would come up and would carry on schooling. Brilliant. Really good.
And you've said you can remember the treatment room. What can you tell us about how it was set up, what it was like?
Oh, God, it's a long time ago. I remember Dr. Wassif's office. I remember the brown bench. I remember laying on the bench and having joints checked. The treatment room is slightly vague. I remember the tables. We'll probably come to this in a minute, but I remember putting the bottles on the table. And at the moment, until you remind me, that's basically all I can remember. I know where it is. If it's still there today, I could probably show you, but that's roughly all I got in the back of my head.
Can I just ask you, Gary, just to shuffle in slightly?
Yeah, sure.
So you're picked up by the microphones a little bit better. Thank you. Now, until you went to Treloar's, I think you just received cryoprecipitate. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then once you arrived at Treloar's, then you started receiving Factor 8 concentrates.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember any discussion, either with you or with your parents, about changing over to Factor?
I think it was my dad. My dad dropped me, or as a hint, that there's a new factor from the general that they want to try us on, and it's easier than my mum sitting at the hospital for 4 or 5 hours defrosting the famous cryo. And I think it was my dad, but we were really young when we went on Treloar's, Factor 8.
So that was before you went to Treloar's?
Yeah.
Do you recall if there was any discussion of any risks involved in changing over?
No.
I want to just look at some Treloar's records with you.
Sure.
They'll come up on the screen in front of you. Could we have TREL 40110 _ 137, please, Shumik? What we've got here, we can see that it's a nursing report, so they seem to be your nursing records. And if we look through, we can see some of the products you received. If we start off on the 14th of September 1980, it seems that you were transfused with interhemophil. And then if we carry on to the 22nd of September 1980, transfused 50% interhem. And at the bottom, the 1st of October 1980, hemophil. And then over the page, please. On the 18th of October, at the top of the page, we can see 50% increase hemophil. 5th of May, 81. What seems to read interhem, although it's not entirely clear, transfused 10 p.m. And then 6th of May 1981, transfused cryobulin. 31st of May 1981, we just see transfused at 9:30, but no note of the product that was used. And then 6th of July 1981, transfused factor 8. There appear to be at least some of the products you received during 1980 and 1981. Do you recall any discussion about which products you'd be given?
No.
And do you think your parents were told anything about the products you were being given?
I can't remember. I don't know.
Could we then turn to TREL 40110 _ 041, please? This is a letter from the 9th of May 1981 from Dr. Chisholm to Dr. Arenstam saying, thank you for your letter about Gary. It's been redacted erroneously, but thank you for your letter about Gary being ready to be trained in self-therapy. He's been on self-administered home treatment for a while, over a year during the holiday period, and in fact before he went to Lord Mayor Treloar College, so there should be no problem. All my patients on home treatment start off with the NHS concentrate, and most seem to manage very well with this. Do you recall receiving NHS concentrate Lister from Dr. Chisholm at home?
I don't.
And do you recall any discussion with Dr. Chisholm about the product you were being given either by her or when you were at Treloar's?
No.
From this letter, it looks like you were being trained in self-therapy at Treloar's, and I think you were.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But do you recall what the process was at Treloar's when you needed treatment, when you realised you had a bleed? Can you tell us what you did?
If I remember, I think we used to wake up with arm or knee, make our way to sick bay, get checked. They used to, I think we mentioned this yesterday, we used to get a bit of paper and then take it down to the treatment nurse, and that's all I can remember.
And then can I take you to another document?
Yeah.
HHFT 301430. This is headed DDAVP trial, May 1982. We can see on the left-hand side your name. You're one of the 7 who were to be in the trial, and it says eligibility for trial. At least 3 days should elapse between the latest factor VIII transfusion and the trial dose. And then the trial will involve 2 boys at a time. There will be 3 stages in the trial, which will start at 8:30 a.m., preferably during weekdays. 1, trial dose of 50% factor VIII. 2, trial dose of 50% factor VIII, followed 20 minutes later by DDAVP. 3, trial dose of 50% factor VIII, followed 24 hours later by DDAVP. And there's a... if we just go to one more document, then I'll ask you something about this, Gary. If we could look at TREL 40110 underscore 135, please. Thank you. We can see your name in the second row, and if we look across, we can see the word interhem. And then at the very bottom of the page, boys should have the same material in the 3 stages of the trial. And then over the page, again, your name is second down, and we've got a date under stage 1 as being the 22nd of June 1982, and stage 2, 28th of June 1982. Were you aware, Gary, at all of this DDAVP trial?
No.
And as far as you know, did your parents know about the DDAVP trial?
Not as far as I know, no.
You've talked in your statement about remembering prophylaxis and receiving prophylactic treatment.
Yeah.
When you were put on prophylactic treatment, do you remember whether that was something that was ever discussed with your parents, first of all?
Vaguely, there's an odd in the back of the head. Dad, it was Dad really. Dad used to say they want to put you on prophylaxis. Till recently, I forgot, and I didn't realise I was on prophylaxis. And I've seen some information, and I was, so. But I do remember Dad saying they want to inject you every couple of days, every day, on prophylaxis.
And do you remember if there was any more discussion than just that was going to happen? Any discussion
That
about...
was going to happen, and that's all I can remember, really.
Could we turn to TREL 40110 underscore 080, please, and we'll go to the last page of the document. The heading of this document, we've seen it with other witnesses as well, transfusion requirements not related to current bleeds. And the indication here is long-term prophylaxis for swollen right knee and plus physiotherapy till further notice. And the frequency was to be alternate days. And we can see a series of entries from November 1982. Looking at the material column, it looks like... Could we see the whole page, please, Shimon? All at the same time. Thank you. We can see that for that whole month you received factor 8, apart from in relation to one entry, which is into hem, and the note is at home. Again, when you were put on prophylaxis, do you remember any discussion about which product you'd be receiving during that time?
No.
And then if we turn back a page to page 3, please, Shumik. Again, we're in December 82, and throughout the month you were just given factor 8 in relation to the prophylaxis. And there seems to be a handwritten note that suggests 48 days, no bleeds. Do you remember anything about that?
No. No.
Having had factor 8 for 2 months, if we then go to the January 1983 part of it, which is the second page, please. You then in the January only had Lister. We're still on alternate days of prophylaxis.
Yeah.
Do you remember any discussion? Was there ever a discussion about the product?
No.
And then in February, so the first page of the document, please. This time with the prophylaxis, we see into hem, into hem, into hem, factor 8, Lister, 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 Lister. Now, in terms of, and then it says at the end, stop prophylaxis in the February. Was prophylaxis something you wanted to receive? Was this something you were keen to have?
No.
What did you do about that?
I remember saying that I never want to go on prophylaxis. Something with us haemophiliacs, we don't like needles. And
Can you just shuffle forward?
yeah, sure. We just don't like needles, so I didn't want prophylaxis. And I'm getting on a bit now. I've had some major operations and I still don't like prophylaxis. I do it in my own way. So.
And did you say that to the doctor, the
Yes,
clinicians treating you at
many a
Treloar?
times. Many
What
a
was their
time.
response?
It's a long time ago. You need it, Gary. You're getting probably bad knees, and it's to help your knees. And it probably relented because we were running young. So.
Tony was also up at Treloar's with you.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
And you recall, your statement tells us that he received a lot more treatment than you.
Yes, he did.
What's your recollection about that? What can you tell us?
We were young lads, all of us, and to have your brother at the same school. He's my brother, so we were brought up together, and we would knock each other, and many a times I would walk past the treatment room just to go up with somebody, a friend of ours, and I'd say, "What are you doing?" So they put me on prophylaxis again. And he was in there more times than I was.
I think it's right though that you obviously don't know what product he was receiving.
I don't.
Just a sense of him being in the sick bay,
Yeah.
in the treatment room.
He was always in there, always. Just messing about, and I'd just be, I don't know, talking to somebody and look round, and there he was. What are you doing? More prophylaxis. More prophylaxis. I hate that word.
And when you were at home, I think you remember sometimes using each other's products, factor concentrate.
I was naughty. If the truth be known, I was very naughty. And I used to run out. I was never on time for any of my appointments. I'm not ashamed. That's not the word I want to use. But I put this to one side back in the 80s. I knew I was a haemophiliac and I needed my factor. But the hospitals, I don't know, they done the damage and I put it to one side. And it was over 10 years when I had my livers checked, certain parts of your body's checked. Yeah, checking for lumps, bumps, groin pains, whatever. Now I can honestly say I'm on top of my therapy and I go every 4 months, I'm on top of it. But at the time, I didn't want to go to hospital, so yes, I did get caught a few times. What's the matter? This is Tony. I ain't got no treatment. Well, you're stupid, ain't you? You're stupid. Good job I've got a boot full in the car. And yes, he used to give me... See, I was only on 2,000, maybe 4. He was on 10,000, 8,000 a bottle. Yeah, you can have one of them. I don't know. I don't know if it's sociological or what, but I used to have one, and I used to fall asleep for an hour. They were strong, but I did wake up with no bleed. So, but I was naughty. I was very naughty. I know I was.
Just taking you back to Treloar's.
Mm-hmm.
If we can turn then to hepatitis.
Yeah.
Could we have TREL 40110 _ 094, please? We can see across the top of this table the dates, and if we look at the column dated the 4th of March 1981, and we follow the column down to where it deals with hepatitis B surface antibody, just towards the bottom. And we can see the word positive. And we can also see the row called SGOT. The column next to the letters is the reference range, the range that it should be in. And we can see the numbers are much higher, 76, 105, 62, 55, 64 and 68. Were you told anything in 1981 about having the hepatitis B antibody?
Not as far as I can remember, no.
And do you know if your parents were told anything about hepatitis?
Truthfully, I'm not sure.
Again, in about 1981, 1982, you're not quite sure when, but when you were about 13 or 14, you've said in your statement that you remember being called into a classroom at the end of dinner time with other people who are haemophiliacs.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
It was I think it was a breakfast morning. We had our regular tables like we usually do, our group of lads on our table, and then, am I allowed to say a name? Am I allowed to say the doctor's name?
Oh, the doctor's name,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think it was Dr. Wassif, one of the heads, come into the middle of the dining room and said, can a certain group of haemophiliacs at that age group go to a certain room? Can the others go to, I think at the time it was 2B. If you walked us back in there now, I could tell you where I sat and which classroom it was. We all walked in. I can't even remember who was behind me, who was in front of me. They walked in, they stood there and they said, have you all got a pen and paper? We all said, yes, sir. I need you to write down these numbers. It turned out to be a certain batch numbers. You've got permission now to go to your dorm to use the private house line to ring home and ask your parents, have the boys got this certain batch number? If so, please stop, send it back to the hospital. And we did.
Looking back now, what do you think that was all about?
At the time, I don't know. I asked Dad, I asked Mum, I don't know. Was it a machine mess up? I don't know. Not long after that, the truth came out. But yeah, at the time, no, it all went back. Me and my brother, we had a little corner in in a downstairs toilet that was safe, from being quite stacked to having 3 or 4 left with not that batch number on. That's what we had left. So they took all the rest back.
Because you'd had a large number of that
Yeah,
batch
we
number.
did. Because there was 2 of us, and Tony was on. He was already on prof at home. He'd go up the general and put you on prof tone.
I think you then remember being home for holidays and seeing Dr. Chisholm in the sort of early 80s.
Yeah.
And you've described her changing her tune with you. What do you mean by that?
We used to live in, not the country, a lot of the guys would know where I'm on about, but we used to live in slightly out the way of Southampton. And Dad and Mum heard of the famous General Hospital being built. And it's got a haemophiliac centre coming. And so to make life easier for them, we moved a bit closer to the hospital. Dr. Chisholm known us since we were, 74. I was little, 5, 6. Tony, when he was a baby, right up until he moved the area. And she always bantered with us, always. We got kicked out of wheelchairs. You boys, the Bennett boys, are going to be parted. You can sleep in that bed, you can sleep in that bed. And that was Dr. Chisholm. When everyone went, which one is it? Mum. It's Gary. Which one is it? Oh, it's Tony today. But because we were young, we used to all go, talk to the nurses, the regular lot. And then I do remember having a meeting with Dr. Chisholm. I think it was Factor 8, maybe a checkup, and her attitude had changed to be polite, professional. There was no banter, there was no, how's the other one? How are they doing? But there was none of that. It was professional.
And I think you think that was sort of early 1980s, before you were diagnosed.
Yeah, I think she knew.
You think she knew that there was something
Wrong. Yeah.
If we just carry on the timeline.
Yeah, sure.
Could we have TREL 40110 _ 055, please? There's a letter from Dr. Wasif to Dr. Chisholm, dated the 28th of June 1983. And at the bottom of the letter, we can see the heading AIDS-related investigations. Which reads, clinically, he exhibits none of the stigmata of AIDS. Examination of his superficial lymph nodes on the 28th of February 1983 revealed palpable bilateral shotty inguinal lymph nodes. There was no change when re-examined on the 9th of June 83, apart from a palpable tiny left cervical lymph node. For your information, we've undertaken the enclosed AIDS-related tests. We're repeating these before the end of term, and we'll let you have a copy of the results when they're available. Were you aware in June 1983 that AIDS-related investigations were being undertaken?
No.
And do you think your parents were aware?
No.
It may be that they began in February.
Indeed.
Given the
Given
date
the
on the
date.
second page.
Yes, indeed. The
Second line.
28th of February 1983. Thank you, sir. You left the college in 1984.
Yeah.
And I think around that time you met a girl called Lorraine.
I did meet Lorraine.
Can you tell us what happened?
It was my first proper girlfriend when I left college. We just met and we clicked. And we were getting serious. We was 16, 17, and Mum and Dad could see us getting closer, but questions were being asked from my Mum and Dad. And it turned out that eventually my Mum and Dad went down to meet her Mum and Dad, and they spoke about me. And let's just say that was the end of the relationship. I've seen her since, and I've seen her Mum and Dad since. and they regret everything that happened that day. But that's the way it was.
Your understanding is the relationship came to an end because they were worried.
Lorraine's mum and dad was worried. Which, I suppose if you ask me, if it was here now and if it was my daughter, I'd probably be the same. Yeah.
You think you were told that you were HIV positive in about 1986?
I think so, yeah.
How were you told?
Again, I think I had a meeting with Dr. Chisholm. And she said, Gary, God, it's a long time ago. I think I had a meeting and she said, Gary, I've got some bad news for you. You've been infected. No, do you know what's been happening recently? Because it was just starting to come up. Have you been listening and reading the telly? And I went, yes. And she said, I'm really sorry, but you're also infected with HIV. Some other.
At that stage, what was your reaction? What were your thoughts?
Hurt. Why me? I went home and hibernated for a year. Didn't want to see anybody. Didn't want to go out. Mum and Dad used to talk to me. So you never see me get married, Mum, and have grandchildren, and how wrong I was, and I hibernated for about a year. They were bad times.
At some point, you then met Renee. And a bit later, you told her and her friend that you had something to tell them.
God.
What happened?
What happened? There was no mobile phones in them days, and everybody was ringing up. Where's Gaz? He's upstairs. He don't want to see nobody. Towards the end of the year, it was about a year, I just didn't want to do nothing at all. My dad said to some well-known friends, and they know who they are, you need to come round and get him out. You need to physically walk in the house and drag him out. They know who they are, and I love them to pieces, and they did. And then, through them and some other friends, I met Renee. I knew Renee anyway, but we weren't close. I knew her through somebody else. In my role back then, because I didn't want a girlfriend, I wanted to pick them all up. So I picked Renee up, and at the time, a friend of Renee's, straight away, where have you been? Where have you been? Oh, I've just been home. Why? There's something I need to tell you. And Renee went over my shoulder and went, you're going to tell us you got AIDS. And that's how Renee found out about me. We sat there, all three of us, on that summer's day, crying our eyes out. I said, I haven't got AIDS, I'm still here. And we're going out to meet the others and have a good night. But Renee and her mate wouldn't leave me alone all night. Oh dear. It was a good time.
You married Renee?
I did marry Renee, yeah. We can have a giggle, but yes, I did, yes.
You've said that your diagnosis really hit home again when she was pregnant with your daughter.
Oh, God, yeah.
And that was largely because she was treated as an infection risk.
Oh, we've all been there. Yellow stickers on everything. She was virtually walking down the corridor with that hazardous stickers wrapped around her. She had blood tests once a week, twice a week. Dr. Chisholm said, Gary, it can go either way. Would you like us to do a test? I think you're doing enough with your blood tests. Looking back, I was very lucky. I've been married twice, and Renee's fine, and my son's mum's fine. So,
you've described that during the 80s, your relationship with Renee it ultimately broke down.
it did.
And that she went through hell and back with you.
Probably, yeah.
That's how you've described it in your
Yes,
statement.
probably. Looking back, yes.
Can you tell us about that time?
I was angry, I think. Many a times I would probably end up drunk. I wasn't violent, I don't think. But I used to get into a state where I was just a mess in the gutter. I loved her to pieces, but I couldn't handle what was going on with all of it. I suppose the hospital. I worked nights, during the day, getting up, going to the hospital, and it did break down. It did break down.
During that time, what was your physical health like?
As far as I know, apart from a right knee that really got bad, I was quite well, as far as I know. Yeah.
You've referred to your second wife, and you remarried in 2004.
Yes.
You've described in your statement a particular day with your second wife and some friends of hers, where your diagnosis and your infection was a particular issue. Do you want to tell us what happened?
Can I mention her name? Is that right? Can I
I think that might be redacted, actually. Sorry, your second wife, isn't
Yeah.
it? That's fine.
Yeah. I met Jan, and we're just starting out. By this time we had Kerry, and she loved her mum, and she loved me, and I did say to Jan, if you don't like my daughter, that's the end of our relationship. How wrong I was. They got on really well, and I'm slowly meeting people Jan met in her life. Certain friends. We're still very close now, and we've had an invite for somebody's house to have a bite to eat. He's into classic cars, yeah, get on well with him. And I did. I thought he was a nice guy. Spent half of the afternoon underneath one of the cars talking about old cars. A few years later, down the line, that relationship between them two was over, and the person in question met somebody else. She told me that the minute I left, he ransacked the kitchen and binned everything that I touched. And he was just speaking to me an hour ago outside.
In terms of your sort of personal relationships, that marriage broke down.
It did, yeah.
And you've been back together with Renee since 2010.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but yes, I have. Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
I just want to talk with you a little bit about Tony.
Yeah, sure.
Tony was also diagnosed as being HIV positive.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how he was told of his infection?
I don't personally. Probably like me, maybe in a room, but I can't remember. He was slightly younger than me, so I don't know if Mum and Dad went with him at the general. I'm not sure.
Did he ever tell you about how he was diagnosed? Or how he was told of his diagnosis?
He probably did, but I can't remember. I can't remember.
What was Tony's reaction to knowing that he was infected? How did he deal with it?
He was angry. Was he angry? He was very angry. He wouldn't talk like we are now. He locked himself away for years. He would talk to me if it was a family event and we stood in the corner. Gav, you tried this treatment yet? No. Oh, it's good, it works. But he wouldn't tell his partner or anybody. Wouldn't tell mum and dad, nothing. But he would talk to me.
You've said in your statement that other than talking to you, he really shut down.
He did shut down. So much that he went to the hospital on his own and he'd come home on his own. That was it. That was the end of the conversation.
You and Tony both also had hepatitis C.
Mm-hmm.
What's your recollection of how you were told that you had been infected with hepatitis C?
I think I'm not 100% sure on dates. I think it was around about 95, 96. Me and Jan we were invited to a party. That morning I had a letter. I have no idea where that letter is. And in that letter it stated that, I'm really sorry, Mr. Bennett, but I have some bad news. You are now infected with hepatitis C. We went to the party. We stood out the way a little bit and people were coming up saying to Jan, what's the matter with Gary? He's just found out he's got hep C. That sticks in my head. I can remember that.
Tony underwent treatment for hepatitis C in 2004.
He did.
What can you tell us about how Tony was during that treatment?
As far as I know, a lot better. And I believe the certain drug was working. But in my eyes right now, but he's not here.
Tony died in 2005.
He did.
And your understanding was that he'd had a stroke.
Yeah.
There's some other documents you've seen that it might have been an encephalopathy. But you've said in your statement you think it was just a build-up of everything.
Everything. Stress. Never spoke to anybody. Nobody. Not even his partner towards the end. No, nobody.
And shortly after Tony died, your father also died.
Yes, he did.
You've said your dad had no hope at all after Tony died.
It was mentioning from Sir Brian earlier that my dad couldn't get it in his head that he was burying his son first. And my dad got cancer, and you could have given him the cure drug, but he could not get round his head that he buried Tony first. And he did die. He did die. And he was my best friend.
And you've said that after your father died, your life just went to pieces.
He was my best friend. He worked. I got him a job with me. We all do things in life. But my dad actually worked with me at our company. And it was my dad driving the lorry. And hear all the guys say, Alan. But I had to still stand there and go, Dad. It was weird. It was weird. We had a good time, good few months together before he fell out. And we were friends. We were mates, not father and son.
You described in your statement the effect of both Tony's death and then your dad's death was enormous on you emotionally.
Yeah.
When Tony died, you'd been having treatment for your own hepatitis C infection. It was with, it seems to be interferon, the injection into your stomach.
Yes, yeah.
What were the side effects that you felt from that treatment?
I can't remember having side effects. I got very tired, and apparently, so I've been told, I got quite moody. And I've been told I still got it some days, but hey, that's the way it is.
And not long after Tony's death, not long after your father's death, you were then told that the treatment was unsuccessful.
Yeah, it was.
Can you tell us about how you were at that point?
I think physically I was okay. I was getting over the loss of Tone and Dad. And I was doing my injections, and as far as I knew, all the blood tests were good and it was working. Tony was in front of me. He was about 12 months, just about to come to the end, and I just started. And yeah, we were talking. My belly's bruised, Tone. Yeah, we'll get better, we'll get better. When we lost Dad and Tony, I remember the phone call. I was standing in the garage, and my nurse from the hospital rang me and said, "Hiya, Gary, it's so-and-so." I said, "Hello. Gary, you sound really quiet. You all right?" I said, "No, not really." I said, "Christmas Day, I lost my brother, and I've just found out my Dad's died of cancer." "Oh, Gary, oh my God. Oh my God." She said, "I've got some more bad news for you. I need you to stop your jabs because it's not working." And I don't know why, but I still think, I'm here, Tony's not here.
Your statement describes that you were in quite a bad place at that point.
I was.
And that you were encouraged by Jan and by Kerry to attend the McFarlane Trust weekends.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how you found those weekends? What those weekends were like for you?
I was hearing people from college. I don't want to sound bad, but people we all knew were slowly getting ill and passing away. And losing my dad and my brother, and home life and jobs, I suppose. Yes, I needed to get away. I needed to do something different. I've always been a bit of an outsider. I've heard through the grapevine there's certain people still with us, not with us. So I've always had an ear, but I've never really been involved. And I got in contact, and I went. I come out that weekend, and I cried. Did I cry? And I didn't kick myself, but I thought I had no problems. I had no problems listening to some of us lads and their stories, virtually, put it bluntly, dragging their backsides down the hospitals, and there's me walking around going, "What are you moping for?" That was a hard weekend, the very first one. I remember there was somebody else new. I don't know his name anyway. And we sat out the back, a bit like the conference was that end, and I sat out the back, out the way, listening to Joe Blogs, blah blah blah. After that, it all closed down. We both in the toilet. God, that was hard-wrenching. Yeah, you're telling me. Looked round and we're both crying. Both crying. He said, I haven't been involved at all. And I said, I have a little bit, but not as bad as these guys. They've been from day one. And we both... that was clear as bell. But we ended up cuddling, and a guy come in, and like you do, being the blokes, "Should I go out of the room?" "No, you're all right." And that's the way we broke the ice, yes. But that was my first time away.
And I think you've described going to 3 weekends.
I did go, yeah.
And finding them very helpful.
Oh, I did, yes. Yeah, just hearing bits and pieces. I mean, even now, we've spoken last night, a few of us. I still run between 2 hospitals. And they've all gone, "Pardon?" I still run. I've seen the document, and it was a problem back in 85, and it's still a problem today. Why do I have to run to 2 hospitals? Can please somebody tell me why I've got to run to 2 hospitals?
One for your haemophilia care.
Yes.
And one for the HIV care.
The clinic, yeah.
going forwards in time,
Yeah.
you then had further treatment for your hepatitis C from the end of 2016 till the end of May 2017.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recall of the side effects of that treatment?
See, unless you say something different, I can't remember any side effects. Probably still moody, probably still grumpy. But actually going to the hospital to say I've got a lump or a rash, as far as I know, no, I never did.
Your statement recalls that while you were on those tablets, you were quite depressed and you were arguing a lot with Renee.
There you go then. There you go, yeah.
And you've... I'll read the part of the
please
statement
do.
if I may. We were arguing. We don't normally argue. I became inward and laid back. I was really laid back. Renee said it was the tablets. I was really low and I kept crying.
Yeah.
I said Renee should leave and I'd help her get a flat.
Yes.
Her reaction was, if you think I've waited for you for 19 years to walk out...
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And that treatment was successful in clearing...
Yes, it did. Yeah.
What's the condition of your liver now?
Absolutely shot to pieces. No, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. I know it's damaged. I know it is. They can take it out, scrape off the mould and put it back in. So as far as I know, hasn't got worse. Ain't got better, but I'm all right.
You've described in your statement that they've said it looks a bit like a cauliflower.
Yes. Basically, yes, they have. Yeah.
And do they monitor your liver now?
Yes, they do, and I'm really good on my appointments. I go. When they're due, I go. Definitely.
Just one final matter. In terms of finances, I just want to ask you about one thing. You remember a long time earlier going with Tony to receive first lump sum payment.
I know exactly what you're going to say, yeah. Yes.
What can you tell us about that first?
That was mentioned earlier today, and it's exactly the same as earlier. But yes, I remember Dad coming in. Boys, we got to go to London. There's a little matter of a little payout for you boys. We need to go up to London and see this gentleman, and we'll go from there. And being excited, you're gonna laugh. You are gonna laugh. I always fancied being a typical English guy with a newspaper and to flag down a black cab. I've achieved that goal. We were young, all of us. I think we come up by train, got the cab, went to a certain building, and then the doors opened. I remember it being a big room, marble floors. We were young, all of us. I think even sliding on the marble floor. And this certain gentleman said to my mum and dad and to us, if you sign a bit of paper, you walk out here with 20 grand. If you don't, you won't get nothing again. I was 17, 18, and Tony was a bit younger. We signed it, we went out, and we had a good time. That's the end of that.
So, Brian, they're the questions I have for Gary. I'm just going to look behind in case anything's come through.
Well, just two questions.
Mm-hmm.
One is, are you aware that as you've sat there, your voice has gone from being quiet and slow to you're entertaining the room with your anecdotes?
So, Brian, I've turned my life around. I'm okay with my life. I've got lots of things happening. I've got lots of adult children, now they're adults, and I've got 4 grandchildren, and they keep me going. I've got a good job, very good job, and I love my life now. And we're supposed to get married this year, but next year it's going to happen. I think the world of her, and she knows that. She's my soulmate.
And the only other thing
Yes.
I want to ask, I don't want to put you back into the quiet, miserable mode.
No, not at all. No.
But what do you reckon was the worst thing about your experiences? apart from losing your dad?
It's got to be Tony. I think, even though his death certificate don't say that, but I think it was all the stress, all the build-up. And we saw him because he moved just down the road from here, funny enough. So we had an hour's drive that night, Christmas Eve. And when we got to the hospital, we knew, all of us know Alton quite well, and we know the A3, all of us. And I remember coming down that road that we'd done for years with Dad, driving us back to college. And at 3 minutes past 1, out of nowhere, there was a gust of leaves round the car, just out of nowhere, and going up. When we got to the hospital, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, boys, come in the sewing room. I'm really sorry, Tony passed away at 3 minutes past 1. And he is exactly how we've left him, because we know you've just done an hour and a half drive. Mum, you are going to see some tubes, drip still in him, and he was. Apart from he was asleep, he was dead. So Tony, I think, Tony will always haunt me.
Well, that memory of the leaves.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Just happened out of the blue. All of us know that road like the back of our hands. I know that road like the back of my hands. I've driven it many a time since leaving college, and that I could take you to that spot with them leaves just nowhere, no trees around, just went up like that. 3 minutes past 1, he passed away.
Thank you very much.
Gary, is there anything else you'd like to say?
What would I like to say? Probably loads. I'll probably regret saying some things when I leave this bench in a minute. I think these guys in front of me, past and present, are amazing. I didn't think this would ever happen, and it is, and people are listening. We didn't ask for it, but we got it. Some of us have managed it, some of us haven't. I've got some great support from family, friends now. That pushed me outside earlier. I had hundreds come through. I'd like to say thank you for Sir Brian for listening, and of course you guys, the team, the inquiry team. I honestly thought for a long time my name was on a bit of paper out of all of us, and on there was my name. I think it's still on there, but I'm still here, so maybe that paper might just be screwed up, I don't know. And hopefully, as somebody said to me half an hour, I will lose that chip off my shoulder. You know, I know you're listening, and I love all of you to pieces. And I'll be home in a few days. Thank you, Sir Brian, and thank you, team.
Well, thank you, Gary. It's obviously it wasn't when you started a task you were enjoying, particularly giving evidence. I think, as I've already indicated, you got much happier about that towards the end.
Yes, I did, yeah. And I think it's listening out there yesterday, because we were early and I wanted to listen to a couple. I'm well out of my comfort zone sat here. I drive a digger for a living. And for all us guys, if it makes you guys feel better, I pull dirt around all day, and I pick that bucket of dirt up, and I've hurt a lot of medical team staff that hurt us back in the 80s. But that's my job, and I love it. So, yesterday helped. I was nervous when I got here again, and I've quite relaxed. I've done my bit, and you listened, and I thank you for that.
Well, it's it is important to us to hear
Yeah.
a number of very different people give evidence about very much the same thing and how it affects them in different ways. As you said, it takes all sorts.
Yeah.
That's why it is so important that you, amongst others, have given your evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tomorrow, sir, we will be hearing from Mr. BC, an anonymous witness, followed by Lee Stay, and then in the afternoon, we anticipate that the presentation will be continued.
Very well. 10 o'clock tomorrow. 10 o'clock.